In the Western Pacific, Challenger Deep occupies a darkness almost 11 kilometers beneath the sea surface. Its measured depth defines the benchmark, yet vast stretches of ocean floor still lack equally detailed mapping. That gap invites a precise question. Could an unknown trench descend even farther than the deepest verified point? The possibility sounds simple, but proving depth demands far more than finding a dark shape on a chart. Ocean depth is measured relative to a moving surface across water that bends, scatters, and delays sound. The deepest claim must survive corrections for sound speed, tides, instrument position, seafloor slope, and data quality. If you lowered a line into darkness, currents could drag it sideways long before it touched bottom. Modern methods are stronger, yet every measurement still carries uncertainty that must be stated rather than hidden. Challenger Deep lies within the Mariana Trench, where the Pacific Plate bends beneath the smaller Mariana Plate. Its exceptional depth reflects plate age, geometry, tectonic forces, sediment supply, and the shape of the overriding margin. Other subduction zones form long trenches, but none has produced a reliably measured point, demonstrably deeper. An unknown rival would require both suitable geology and absence from the detailed surveys already covering likely candidates. The mystery, therefore, becomes a contest between unexplored area and constrained planetary structure. It is not enough for a basin to be unmapped. It must also plausibly host an extreme convergent boundary. The investigation begins by asking where such a feature could hide and which observations would expose it. Most oceanic trenches follow subduction zones that are visible through earthquake patterns, gravity, volcanism, and regional bathymetry. A completely unknown giant trench would disturb several datasets even before its deepest pocket was directly sounded. Satellites infer broad seafloor relief from small variations in sea surface height caused by underwater mass distribution. This method reveals major ridges and trenches globally, but its resolution cannot establish a record-setting narrow depression. Shipborne multi-beam sonar sends sound across a swath and calculates depths from returning echoes. Accurate conversion requires profiles of temperature, salinity, and pressure, because these properties control sound speed. Survey vessels also need well-determined position, motion correction, calibrated systems, and track spacing suited to steep terrain. At extreme depth, the sonar footprint expands, and sloping bottoms complicate, which point produced a particular echo. Multiple crossing lines can expose artifacts that appear convincing along only one direction. Direct submersible pressure measurements offer an independent approach, converting calibrated pressure into depth with environmental corrections. They sample a vehicle's path rather than an entire basin, so they confirm points within a sonar-defined landscape. Challenger Deep has been measured repeatedly by different expeditions using modern acoustic and in situ instruments. Reported values vary by meters or tens of meters because methods, reference surfaces, and uncertainty treatments differ. That variation does not erase the feature's status. It shows why unsupported precision is misleading. Several other deep Pacific trenches approach comparable scales, making careful comparison essential. The Tonga, Philippine, Kuril-Kamchatka, and Kermadec systems contain profound depressions but remain shallower in verified measurements. Historical depth records sometimes changed after navigation errors, false echoes, or incomplete sound speed corrections were resolved. A single extraordinary sounding carries little weight if neighboring tracks and independent instruments cannot reproduce it. Likewise, names such as hole, deep, and trench describe morphology, not guaranteed rank. Ocean mapping coverage is improving, but detailed modern bathymetry remains uneven, especially in remote, rough seas. Unknown smaller features certainly exist, including seamounts, scarps, and narrow basins below coarse global maps. The verified context leaves logical room for surprise, while strongly limiting the size of anything completely concealed. Now the hypothesis can be sharpened into places and mechanisms rather than a vague appeal to unexplored ocean. Could a known trench contain an unsurveyed slot deeper than its mapped minimum? This is more plausible than an entirely unknown trench because broad subduction geometry would already be visible. A narrow depression between survey lines might escape early mapping, especially where legacy tracks are widely spaced. However, record depth requires substantial vertical difference, and steep local relief usually leaves signals in surrounding soundings. Could sediment conceal a deeper bedrock trench beneath its present muddy floor? Yes, buried structure can extend lower, but geographic ocean depth concerns the current water-seafloor boundary, not hidden basement. Could tectonic movement suddenly create a new record through an earthquake? Large earthquakes deform seafloors, yet expected vertical changes are far smaller than the kilometers needed for a new giant trench. Could a cavern or fissure beneath the floor count as greater ocean depth? No, unless open water forms a mappable seafloor surface. Subsurface cracks are geological structures, not trench depth. Could unusual water chemistry make sonar exaggerate depth by slowing sound more than assumed? Poor correction can bias results, which is why temperature and salinity profiles accompany high-quality deep surveys. You encounter an isolated extreme number, uncertainty, and reproducibility matter more than its dramatic rank. Could sediment avalanches excavate a pocket deeper than Challenger Deep? Turbidity currents can erode and redistribute sediment, but evidence for record-scale excavation would require mapped morphology and repeat measurements. Could another planet-scale subduction zone lie beneath an ice shelf or marginal sea? Earthquake and gravity observations constrain major boundaries, while ice complicates access without making enormous trenches geophysically invisible. The best remaining scenario is a slightly deeper pocket within a recognized, incompletely surveyed hadal system. Even there, slightly matters because plausible surprises are more likely to involve limited differences than an additional kilometer. Measurement uncertainty could temporarily reverse rankings when two depths overlap within their reported error ranges. Scientists should then describe them as statistically unresolved rather than crown a winner from nominal values. Independent confirmation protects against false bottoms, side echoes, equipment timing errors, and incorrect reference surfaces. A valid discovery would require coherent surrounding topography, not merely one anomalous return. Pressure data from a descending vehicle should agree with calibrated acoustic depth within their respective uncertainty. Repeated passes under different headings would test whether terrain or sonar geometry created the apparent minimum. Until those tests succeed, an unknown deeper trench remains possible in principle, but unsupported by direct evidence. The search matters beyond record-keeping because hadal depth controls pressure, habitat isolation, and sediment transport. Every additional kilometer increases hydrostatic pressure by roughly 100 atmospheres, reshaping biological constraints. Animals entering deeper water require cells that maintain membrane function and stabilize proteins under compression. Food arriving from above becomes focused by slopes, while isolated basins may support distinct scavenger communities. A bait odor spreads with near-bottom currents. Amphipods detect the plume, swim toward it, and exploit a rare energy pulse. That documented sequence shows adaptation to scarcity, though species composition differs among trenches. Microbes process organic compounds within sediment, coupling extreme pressure to carbon and nutrient transformations. A newly mapped deep would therefore be an ecological and geological discovery, not simply a numerical trophy. It could reveal fault scarps, landslide deposits, and habitats omitted from coarse global models. For you, the difference between 10 and 11 kilometers may seem visually negligible across an ocean globe. For an instrument or organism, that interval adds pressure, descent time, engineering risk, and separation from surface supply. Record claims also shape public understanding, making transparency about uncertainty a human stake. Exaggerated announcements can outpace verification, while cautious mapping builds a durable shared reference. The deeper goal is a complete seafloor map with resolution appropriate to hazards, habitats, cables, and earth science. Commercial routes rarely need hadal detail, so record searches depend on scientific priorities and costly dedicated expeditions. Remote seas, deep water, and ship time create practical gaps, even when satellite clues identify the broad terrain. International data sharing can reduce duplicate coverage and direct vessels toward genuine holes in modern mapping. Indigenous or historical navigation knowledge may guide regional questions, but depth records still require calibrated physical measurements. The mystery connects exploration with restraint. Openness to discovery must coexist with resistance to attractive anomalies. Future evidence begins with identifying known trenches whose deepest sectors lack dense, modern multi-beam coverage. Survey lines should cross at different angles and extend beyond the candidate depression into stable surrounding terrain. Contemporaneous water column profiles would reduce sound speed uncertainty throughout the full acoustic path. A calibrated full ocean depth vehicle could then descend through the mapped minimum and record independent pressure data. Instrument clocks, positions, tides, and reference ellipsoids should be documented so others can reproduce the calculation. Raw and processed bathymetry would allow specialists to inspect filtering choices and reject spurious isolated points. Repeat surveys could reveal whether sediment movement changed the floor or whether initial differences were methodological. Geological context must also fit a coherent subduction structure capable of sustaining the measured relief. Biological sampling should follow only after depth is established, preventing ecological novelty from being inferred from an uncertain location. If competing sites overlap within uncertainty, the honest result may be several co-equal deepest candidates. Better instruments may narrow that range without changing the basic geometry of Earth's trenches. The chance of a dramatically deeper, completely unknown trench is small because major relief leaves global geophysical traces. The chance of a modestly deeper pocket cannot be eliminated while detailed coverage remains incomplete. You can therefore hold curiosity and skepticism together without forcing the ocean into certainty. Future maps should label unresolved terrain openly, keeping absence of coverage distinct from evidence of exceptional depth. Return to Challenger Deep, where repeated measurements replace the old image of an immeasurable abyss. Beyond its mapped slopes, unexplored gaps remain real. But gaps are invitations to measure rather than evidence of a deeper trench.